Hello everyone, this is Beastly Eel here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the fourth episode of Andor. So the fourth episode of Andor starts off with Cassian going into space with Lutheran, and he's basically explaining to Cassian what is going on, why he's doing this and everything else, and he kind of gives Cassian a choice. He basically tells him, you can just run away and never come back, or you can fight for something greater. Because he claims that he knows Cassian enough to know that he's going to want to do something greater. And so, because of that, offers him a chance to do something that not many others are allowed to do. So he explains to him that he would have him do a job with 6 other people. I think it's 6 other people. To help kind of not eradicate the Empire, because that's not going to happen that way, but to significantly cause some damage to their supply chain, especially in that area of the galaxy. So Cassian has to make the decision, and basically he decides to do it. So he then goes on to get dropped off on this planet, where Lutheran kind of talks to this woman, Deidre, who looks like a shepherd person, like basically looks dressed like a shepherd on this remote planet, right? And so she's pissed that he's changed the rules and changed the plan completely, and she's furious about it. But he basically explains to her, if you don't accept him, then the plan's going to be off, and he's going to be canceling it completely. So she eventually, obviously, gives in, and she allows Cassian to join them. But he goes by the name Carp or Kem. I don't remember. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm sorry. I can't remember the code name he gave, so I'm just going to keep calling him Cassian. Just for this intents and purposes, because I don't remember what he called himself. But anyway, so he goes by his pseudonym, and they start walking, and he's trying to get as much information out of this woman as possible, and she's basically telling him, shut up and keep going. Now, during all this, they have to hide because TIE fighters are flying around, and he's very concerned, obviously, and so is she. But when they leave, she goes, they're not going to be coming back at all the rest of the day for sure. So they continue to move on, and he's trying to get, like I said, as much information out of her as possible, and she's just not really caring. So when they get to the base, the rest of the crew is not happy to see somebody new, mostly because these people have been on this planet for months, getting all their stuff kind of situated, understanding the idea of what they need to do, and planning how it's going to happen. And they've been doing it for months, and now 3 days before they're supposed to actually go, it turns out that they decide to add a new guy. So they're not happy. There's a lot of convincing that has to be done, right? And they finally, I don't want to say they agree, but they kind of just go with it. And so they explain to Cassian the plan, and he thinks it's the dumbest thing ever. He thinks it doesn't make any sense, because they're basically considering it a suicide mission. And they explain to him that normally it would be, and that there's a festival that comes in, which happens to be in 3 days. Or I think at that time it might be 2. Don't quote me on that, though. But it's in a couple of days. And that's where the entire population of the planet goes to this area that's very close to the base that they are trying to break into. And while they're coming up with that, he doesn't have any excuse whatsoever on it not working. And explaining that there's a meteor shower that happens, but it's not actually a meteor shower. It seems to be more of ice crystals that explode when they get into contact with the atmosphere of the planet, and makes a great spectacle on the ground, but is horrendous for flight. But they think they can navigate through it right before the crystals explode. They would mask their escape, and then when the crystals start to explode, the Empire will not be able to come after them. So that's that part of the story. I talk about that because there's two other parts we have to talk about. Um, the next part I'm going to talk about is after Lutheran leaves, he goes back to, so he dresses up and he's dressed up to the nines. I mean, rings, wig, you name it, beautiful cloak, right? And he goes to what apparently is his store, where he sells artifacts of all these different civilizations. So a woman comes in, Mon Mothma. I hope I say her name right. She's a senator. So they begin to talk. She goes to look in the back for a specific gift for her husband, and it turns out that they are both part of the Rebel Alliance. She's actually helping fund it, and she gets a gift for her husband, and they go back and forth about talking about who's really in the most danger right now, and she's claiming it's her because once they find out that she's behind everything, they'll kill her first, and that'll be like the first rendition of what's going to be happening. And he, on the other hand, is just wanting more money, more resources, and basically getting the thing further on. She buys the gift and everything else, and she goes back home. Back home, her husband has decided to make plans with all of the senators that she does not like, that are very pro-Empire, I am assuming, although we don't know that for a fact. And they get into a huge fight over it, and she finally decides she can't cancel now, but she's not happy about it, and he just doesn't care. So we definitely see that the Empire knows that there's some sort of plan or a group of people trying to stop them. And they're trying to add spies into all these locations to kind of weed them out and get rid of them. And we hear them talking about it with Lutheran and the senator, but it's unclear of exactly how it's going to happen. So it seems like it's still a lot of small missions where they're not a cohesive group yet, which is not that surprising, but just interesting to know that that's where they are right now. Granted, this is 5 years before Rogue One, so they weren't really at this point on a full-on alliance yet. They were like little subsections of the the Rebel Alliance, or the rebellion, I should say. And the last part of this episode has to do with the fact of the security officers, where in the Empire, the Empire has basically a security bureau, and they go through and try to hunt down all people who are against them. And what I find interesting is the leader of it basically explains that they are not to hold and create peace. They are to locate the disease and eradicate it, which I find interesting that they use those phrasing, because it's basically the way the Empire wants it is if you're against them, you're dead. Which shouldn't be all that surprising for those of you who have watched any of the Star Wars films. But overall, it's just interesting to know that they're blatant about it, which is interesting. So there's a little bit of back and forth with a couple of the Bureau people. This one woman who's rise through the ranks wants control over the case about Cassian and Lutheran blowing up and killing 7 men of the security force. And she's denied because she can't prove that the artifact that was stolen from her sector is related to the incident at hand. It was a whole convoluted thing. But anyway, in the end, the Empire took over the security officers, and they disbanded and were split up. And what happened was the guy who screwed up the most, the one who basically watched all his men get blown up, had to go back to living with his mother. Weird as all heck. So the weird thing too was like the episode ends abruptly, in my opinion, personally. It ends with them talking about the plan, and Cassian basically couldn't come up with anything against it, and the episode ends. So we know that I would hope that the next episode actually has their plan in action. We're also going to see the Empire hunt down the killers of the security force. Granted, obviously they don't know that it's Cassian yet, but they're definitely going to be hunting him, hunting whoever they think it is down. And we also don't know anything about his sister. Still, she may or may not be still alive. And I'll be curious to see how much of the rebellion we get to see more of, like who else is going to be involved and everything else. But let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comments below. I mean, overall, like I said, it's kind of one of those things where it is a tough thing to kind of figure out. But overall, I'm very interested to get what you guys have to say in the comments below. As always, if you like the content you see, please like and subscribe below. Other than that, this is going to be Beastly Eel signing out. Have a great night.